There we go, streams on YouTube. Mom, I'm on TV. Okay, wonderful. I see if the attendee is still clicking through there. I think let's get this started. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today, titled What is this TISAX thing everyone is talking about? If you haven't met me before, I'm Taryn. I'm the marketing manager here at Ancona. We're an international training and consulting firm. TISAX is something relatively new, so to speak, something I certainly don't know a lot about. But therefore, I'm pleased to have our panel with us today. Armin, you've been with Ancona as an auditor and consultant and trainer, I think, since the beginning of Ancona.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And you've just rushed to this straight out of a VDA 6.3 training. No rest for the wicked. Welcome, Armin. And we're also excited to have Brandon, who works closely with Armin as a project manager and an employee training auditor, I believe. So he joins Armin on all the projects, and they're assessing things for clients. And last but not least, welcome Stefan, our subject matter expert for today, certainly the one who's worked closest with TISAX. So thank you for making time to join us today.
Hello, everybody.
Cool. So just a couple housekeeping things. Attendees, your cameras are off, are muted, so you don't need to worry, but please feel free to use the chat function. Let us know where you are, chat away. For my side, it's really helpful if you can use the Q&A block in the bottom of your screen when you do have questions. We have an initial presentation, but we will certainly open it up to any questions at the end. And if you use that box, it makes my life a little bit easier to make sure that I don't miss your questions. So let's get this started. When I hear TISAX, I think tax. And two things for sure in life, death and taxes. Isn't another thing, if you work in the automotive industry, requirements are for sure as well. So, Armin, what is TISAX? What's the benefit to it? What is it?
Yeah, Taryn, thank you. When I heard the first time from TISAX, I was also surprised. TISAX, what is that? A lot of people asked me, and the information flow was not so, yeah, there was for me a surprise, and other very important information come from the OEM. Some customers send me some information. Hey, what is TISAX? I have to do that. What is that? And the most of companies, I ignore them. They say, okay, what is TISAX? And TISAX, a lot of people say, oh, there's a certification. No, TISAX. The acronym of TISAX, I think that's explained a little bit the wording and bring us in the right direction what TISAX is. TISAX is an acronym, and the wording what is in TISAX is trusted for T, information, security, assessment, exchange. Oh, that is TISAX. So that is a brand linked to NX connected, and so now we have to see what we can follow up. What is then this TISAX based on? And always the people ask, yeah, what can I do first, or what have I do? And they say, oh, sorry, when I see that as a system expert or process expert in ISO, in IRTF, and VDA 6.3, all this kind of things, says, look, my analysis of this is first, companies have to follow the starting point, ISO 27001, as a very good starting point. So to understand, well, the ISO 7021 follow the high-level structure. Oh, high-level structure means all other system requirements follow the same concept and the structure, and helps company to get in. So that also that the VDA guidelines jump on this with their automotive association guidelines for TISAX, and then it's coming up of questionnaires and information of security. So what is the benefit? Yeah, that is the people says, oh, is that another certification? So I say, no, stop. It is not a certification. That is a registration. Registration means, yeah, okay, but is that really a benefit for us? And say, yes, it is a benefit. If you don't do it, you're out of the business. That's what I learned from the OEM. That is clear, stated. You have to have TISAX. Otherwise, you don't get any contracts, and you can't make any quotes to the companies, to the OEMs. And what is then? Then you're falling back, or you make a decision, you go out. But what is behind TISAX for me, it is important with all this security and all these cyber attacks and everything what's coming up. I think TISAX bring us in a new higher level and helps us to secure our system, our management and standards. I think that is what I think very important, that we open our eyes, we open our mind to follow, okay, not say, oh, TISAX is the next big thing what we have to do and cost a lot of money. No, we have to see what is our benefit. And I guarantee you the result is visible for the participants and all for all.
Awesome. So, I mean, you kind of touched on this, or Stefan, is it just another nice to have label?
No, it's not. It's not. Like Armin told, it's about it's a management system, and every management system is based on the management of existing risks. Risks are rising not just because of cyber security items and so on, but also the effect on your customer when something is going wrong is much bigger than in former times, because the automotive development became a much more complex challenge during the years. We can see that for the last decades already, and so this leads to the necessity that we have to handle the existing risks in a system and to do it systematically. And we also can compare, Armin told about the basis for this TISAX that is existent in the ISO 27001. We can compare it to the IATF. It's also mandatory if you're a manufacturer for parts in the automotive. And the IATF is based on the ISO. And so the TISAX has become a mandatory requirement by the OEMs, at least the European OEMs. This started a few years ago, and it's getting wider and wider, and it's also an international requirement, and you can't do without. That's what we mean if we say it's do or die. You can't do without. It's mandatory, so you are in the business or you are outside of the business if you don't have that. And this TISAX compliant ISMS is always based on this ISO 27001. This is a high level norm, and you can have a certificate on that. But TISAX is going further because automotive industry has defined additional labels that are containing separate requirements. And so it depends on your customer what label will be suitable for your business. And this is, another positive thing is that the TISAX is different from certification, for example, in 27001, but you also could have. The TISAX guarantees that the automotive customers accept this label because it's listed and it's trusted. What it's said with a name. They mean that if you are listed in it, it doesn't need any additional audits at your site. Your scope is labeled, and that is accepted, that you are competent and that you are able to take the responsibility for your practice in spite of the information security. And that's also a thing the TISAX label will fulfill this requirement that the customers in the automotive have. And it leads also to a higher value of your company, and you will be considered as a reliable partner then. This is all additional value for your company.
I had to kind of laugh at that. I'm pretty sure most of the people on this call were happy hearing fewer audits. Excuse me. So what's your experience with implementing TISAX? Stefan, you in particular, personally, your company has been TISAX labeled already 5 years ago, which means you've had to go through a renewal as well. Do you want to tell us a bit about that process and that experience?
Yes, there were always new tasks again that we didn't consider first, and it's always changing a little bit. But we always thought that we were really aware of information security, but it's not just about security that's walking around there are many things that we had to take care of additionally, and a huge lot of tasks were added to the daily business, and at first it was a hump that we had to face, but in the end all these things became a routine, and it was frankly good business practice, because it's risk management, and this risk management ensures the whole working of your company. It makes your results better, it makes your processes more effective, and this is not only with quality management systems, it's the same with TISAX.
Yeah. Well, a lot of management systems, I'm certainly the kind of person who doesn't like, I like to do curly lines, you know, but the systems to me, they're in place because they're actually a lot of common sense. If most people practiced common sense, we wouldn't actually need to have detailed systems. Maybe that sounds a little bit harsh, but they are business practice. Brandon, and when it comes to suppliers and the projects you've been working on, do you have any examples to give us?
Yes, I've actually got 2 examples that I find very interesting. A little while ago, I was over in the Netherlands, and we were at a company doing training for something else. And this company was TISAX registered. And as a guest at their company, we found very interesting that as soon as you walk in the door, you get to reception and things like that. And you can't go anywhere from them. We realized we couldn't use the toilet without a key card. The security is very strict. It's not just involving one department, it's everything. It's where your employees have access to certain places at certain times of the day. So we had to be given guest key cards just to go from the boardroom to the toilet. It's quite something, I'll be honest. And then also we had a second company we did a gap analysis for down here in South Africa. It was a manufacturer for 2 OEMs, and we found very interesting how it's what information your employees need to know and what they don't need to know. Yeah. They were manufacturing parts for the OEMs where 2 OEMs had come to an agreement where they were going to produce the same vehicle in the one factory for both brands, I should say. And because of that, the part that this one company now has to produce for 2, the employees could realize that the parts coming out of the factory were for the other OEM, and yet they were putting a different brand on there. And the employees knew straight away that it's not right, we're producing the wrong parts. But
Yeah.
yeah, long story short, it's a need to know basis.
Crazy.
Yeah, my experience with supplier is first, you think, oh, I have to be registered and pay my 450 or 500 euro, and everything is done. And then I can carry on like it was and can make some quotes. But some, they don't realize that with the registration, the first registration, the process starting. And that was always wondering to see, hey, then they come as how we can implement that. And that was a little bit shocked on this case, and says, when I asked them, so TISAX, what do you do now? Ah, that is a part of IT. I say, what do you think it's IT? Ah, that IT will manage that. So, but what they not realize, that is not only the IT, that's the whole management is involved in this process. And that's okay, and that is very important. When you take the bridge to the 9001, if the management is not involved, we say, okay, quality management do everything. That's the same mistake what a lot of companies have done in the past. The same with ITF. ITF only works where the whole management is involved, and the whole management of the whole company follow a certain rules. So the same with TISAX. Is the mindset not there and says, oh, that makes IT, I guarantee you, a lot of costs coming up. And that's what we would try to inform our suppliers, say, please make sure you understand the whole process. Read the things, read all the standards, read the requirements, what is behind. Well, also when I talked to Stefan, that was my first point for 5 years ago, that he was TISAX registered, and at the point also registered. And always when I see, oh, that is not so easy to do everything alone. And that is not only the supplier go on the market and will see, oh, who can help me? And then it says, often when I see a quote, the quote coming from an IT company. So, and often that's why I audit also some IT companies. They like to sell their ITs. They like to follow their own rules. And I think a lot of companies, what I auditing in my life, and I have over 4,000 audit days on my shoulder, it is always the IT was a little bit outside. So to understand why we need the system, why is the system helpful? And this is not only to do with automotive industry, that is a mindset. The companies have to understand why we need that. It helps us, it brings us the benefit. That doesn't matter, is ITF, is a TISAX, is it a 14,000, 27,001. If we understand that in companies, or we push them to understand, I think that makes for everybody the life much easier. And I can only push the people. This is when I make leadership training, I say, please, you have to understand that is an investment. When I make an investment, I expect a return of investment out of this, what I put in. And what is the return of investment? I have a safe company, a trusted company. The OEM trusted us what we do, and all these kind of things. And I think that is what we have to push also the supplier, the whole supply chain, to follow the certain rules. And I think that is my understanding also for management systems, to follow the rules, to follow them. You get better processes, you get less scrap, you get the better communication to your customer. And that's what we want. We don't want fighting with customer. We don't want fighting with any standards. I love standards. They help us, and not they squeeze us, they help us. That is my point, what I saw. And as a last point, I had, that is not so long, Stefan was with me in this call. Stefan, maybe you remember, they phoned me and said, I mean, I have to do a quote tomorrow. He asked me, what is TISAX? I said, oh, you are very late. He never knows what it is. But in this case, I only tell to the OEMs, please inform more and more the people, the supplier base to TISAX. Not only send a letter, and that's what about my first impression in the beginning, that the OEM sent a letter to the supplier, and in this letter said you have to do TISAX. And that is, in my opinion, not the right way. We have to start to bring these people, this mindset, and I think everybody have fun, and everybody have then the benefit what we're talking about since the beginning.
I agree completely, totally. You have to think of it like an investment, and the return of invest is the core of it. It's not just about having higher security. It's about winning contracts, for example. You don't lose contracts because if it's mandatory, you will not get any further contracts, and you will lose your contracts if you don't have it. You also learn and improve processes, and you learn more about your firm. So it's do or die. If you want to take part in this automotive business, it's mandatory. You have to do that. You also can do without, but there are a bit different businesses. But if you want to take place in the automotive business, you can't do other. And our advice is don't rest on your laurels, because establishing the management system takes time and might require huge changes in your organization. But in the end, you reap the benefits. In our case, it was a 2-year process with no external support. You might be able to improve upon it if you use external support, because there are many questions you don't understand from this VDA questionnaire fully, and there is a certain kind of understanding, is a certain kind of facing the problems then, and this sometimes is quite different from a certification like ISO, for example. So Armin, if you go to a company, they want to implement a management system, for example, ISO. What kind of timeline are they looking on?
Yeah, Stefan, that's a very good question. The timeline is always what they ask me. The best is when they ask me, what is the timeline? Is it next week finished that we can certify? So that is some people come in there. But I have a nice example in other industry. They want to implement the first digital quality management system or management system in their company, and they ask me, what is the process, what is the timeline? And they say the timeline can be 4 months, can be 3 years, but what is the key? What is the key? The key is always, then I put it, the key is that the management support. So if the management don't support, then can it be 5 years and you not get to the end. But the point is what I always suggest in 3 phases. In this case, first, you prepare, you inform what you want to do to, let's say, prepare first the documentation. And that is very helpful for the ISO that they have this high-level structure. And always, I will tell you that the combination into the 70-21. So that is not a big, let's say, a big advantage to put it in. So that's what I say, okay, make it in 3 phases, inform the people, train the people that they understand what we want to do. And then the second part and prepare the second part, and that is the hardest part in the phase 2, to implement in each section of a company. It's not only quality make it all this, but some departments in companies, even they don't understand why I'm involved. I make my job, I make my things, and that's it. The IT is the same thing. So IT is a special area. Sales is a special area. That's my experience always when I coach companies to implement. A wrong thing is always to say, I mean, can you implement the management system? I say, no, I can't. You have to do it. I can only coach you. I can drive you in the right direction. I can help you to qualify your people. And that comes to a point of, yeah, what cost me that? And I say, listen, qualification, you qualified your people, that costs nothing. And some people then inquire, they say, why it costs nothing? That is an investment. You invest in the qualification of people. So that means you get a return of invest. You have better processes, you have less scrap, you have stable processes, no customer complaints or less customer complaints, all this kind, it's a lot of things. When I see in companies so many KPIs around, and 80%, 60%, they do something or nothing. They have plenty of data, but they cannot do anything. And when I make the slash to the implementation, the people want to do it. But if you see that the top management do not support them, then it's a very hard job. Then it's often 2 years, 3 years before they understand. And often the OEM make the pressure on these people and say, why you implement the IATF system? Why you implement the ISO? Often the answer is, yeah, the OEM wants. Why you invest the TISAX? Yeah, why the customer mandatory? They say, please make your mindset in a different way. Say, oh, is that maybe a system or helps my company to get set up in a better level? And this mindset, that's what in my job, I hope I can bring more and more people in this mindset, in the thinking, okay, management system is for me. If it's good for me, automatically it's good for the customer. Of course, I have to follow customer requirements. Of course, I have to follow the legal requirements, and that's often the part, I have to follow my own requirements in the company. And I can't understand when I see companies, they break their own rules. In this case, you cannot have a benefit. And that's what I want always to talk to the people. Please, the system is for you. Doesn't matter. Is IATF, is it TISAX, is it 27001? Doesn't matter. It's for you. It's for the company and helps to bring it in another level. And if you don't do it, you don't have a chance to survive on the market. So easy as that. Or some people.
Yeah, Stefan mentioned do or die. So I mean,
yes, that's right. And the third level is always, if it is implemented, then please audit, monitor internally. I know internal audit is the hardest part from auditing. So we know the process, we know the people. So that is very hard. But even when I see how the people deal with internal audit, it's the same with TISAX. When Stefan says, yeah, they come always with new points around the corner to implement new things. Also the TISAX, say the TISAX assessors, they also learn every audits what you do, they learn more and more. Mm-hmm. And that's clear. So I have to understand why it is. Is it a benefit for me? Then I do it. And I say clearly to everybody, if you don't understand it, if you don't want to do it, leave it. It makes no sense, cost a lot of money, and you will not be happy. Start in the right way, implement, then implement it, bring the top management in the boat. The top management must go and push everybody to say, that's our company, we want to do it. And I think that is what we have to try to help companies to understand. Sometimes it's very, very bad for them to bring them the mirror to see, oh, where I'm standing. And that's why I say, that's why I always laugh and say, I have to make the tick box in the computer, in the computer for the, what do you call it, in the portal. I have the tick box in the portal done and think, oh, now I'm safe. I get my request for quotation. I can do it. Now I say, please, then you have to start. Where's your action plan? The first step, where's your gap analysis that you see? Nobody can say we have nothing. No, that's wrong. That is not a behind. You have something. You have IT in place. You have people working in place. Your management system, most of them are certified IATF or ISO. So put on the 27,000 And I think then that's the right way to carry on and to make also your company happy and also your customer happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Armin and Stefan, you've actually both touched already on what my next question was going to be, which was, is this just an IT department thing? But I think you've made it super clear that it isn't only IT departments. I mean, we're covering all sorts of information, and with TISAX, it's not just the digital information, it's also physical information, security, and Stefan, you were explaining certainly, fun, it might be about 50% management, 50% IT, because you're using the infrastructure.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and it could be a major mistake that they consider it only as a IT department's problem. It's not so. You need to develop new knowledge and seek advice for external lawyers, for example, also for contractual things like GDPR. You have to rework your contracts with your employees, for example. You have to face that certain rules in your company are not compliant with that, and you have to consider every process in the whole firm and to check it against the TISAX, and so every process has to face these requirements. We can see here a lot.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading there what's in front of me, and it really touches absolutely all aspects of the business.
Just like other systems do, yeah. And you can't disclose anything about that. So it's the same as quality management, for example. It touches all aspects of your business, not just quality or IT department. It's the same here. Management is affected. Your partner management, or your customers or your suppliers are affected. The relationship to them and the processes that you are practicing with them. Then your structural security, for example, it's about your building. It's about your security systems, for example. Could be an alarm system. Could be how you put your for example, your prototype parts in stock. How you protect them from external access. Of course, IT security. It's a huge thing. But it's also the organization itself. How do you handle it? How do you improve your system? How do you face new risks, for example? Risk management is a certain thing. When we started, we couldn't imagine that there was a risk like a pandemic situation, for example. And sometimes there was. Yeah. So everything is changing all the time, and it's considering this TISAX system, your information security is considering the whole firm. Everywhere information is handled, or there is a content of information, this has to be secure. There are certain things that you have to consider. It's the availability of your data. It's the confidentiality and the integrity of your data. You have to protect that, and the data is inside of all your processes and is handled everywhere.
And that's really the pillars of information security, isn't it? Confidentiality and availability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It's actually very interesting to me. You got to not think this isn't just about email access. This is absolutely everything throughout your organization. And with Encona also going through ISO 27000 and TISAX labeling, it's crazy the amount of aspects we've had to touch on, and we are touching on. We're in process.
Good luck.
It's ticking along. So do you want to run us through the process so people can understand? And in particular, Stefan, I've had a couple questions. I think you're going to touch on them. But if you could explain like kind of how a scoring system works, and maybe you've got an example of what's an actual label. What is this label thing instead of certificate?
Well, the TISAX process, we can see it on this slide. It consists in 3 steps. At first, before you come to the first step, you should have a management system, information security management system. For example, based on ISO 27001. And then you come to this registration step. It's the simplest part of the process because it costs you only 480 euros, and then you can sign in and register to this TISAX platform. This means that there will be a scope defined, and this scope is to be considered in your assessment. That's the second step. The assessment means that you are making there is an assessor from a testing service provider, and this assessor has a kickoff with you. There is a certain process for an initial assessment. They are looking close into all your system, all your processes, and then the end of the initial assessment is the initial assessment report, and there will be some findings, major or minor findings, and this leads to corrective actions. You have to create a corrective action plan, and this also is considered then. And if you have removed all your major deviations and you have reached a minor level 2.7, then you will get a temporary label and you can work as compliant. But this doesn't mean that you can't lay back and not handle these minor deviations. You also have to get rid of them, and this happens in a follow-up. It takes you another few months to get this follow-up, and after a successful follow-up, there will be a label without any deviations, and this will be valid for 3 years then. And this whole process is about 6 to 9 months. You should not underestimate it because it's really long, and you have to really always to take it serious, that you don't lose any things. You always have to take care of all the deviations and have to improve your system in every point that is mentioned here in this reports. So this is a huge work to get through this assessment. It's not so easy, and there's always something new appearing, some questions that you don't expect, and it's always new, something new inside of these reports because the time is changing and your risks are changing, and sometimes within few months there will appear some new risks, or they will be changing a little thing, so you have to handle it in a different way, but there are always solutions. The question is how you handle these risks and you handle the tasks that you are faced. And then if you're successful in the end, there will be the exchange of this result. And this means in this step 3 that on the platform where you are registered, there will be published a result. We also have a separate slide for that. So it looks like this. There's a result there. You can see your scope ID, for example, and your location and company name and so on. And in the end, there is also mentioned how the assessment ID was, so they can see whether you had a level 2 or a level 3 assessment, for example, assessment level. And the result of this is the TISAX label that you wanted to reach. And the TISAX label is visible. You can publish it. You also can hide it, but there's no sense of that because the exchange is the major sense of this TISAX labeling in addition to the original 2701. And so if you have published that, every customer can see with a click that you have, for example, an info very high and a proto very high labeling, and you are a reliable partner for tasks that are affected by such questions. And there's also noticed the time, how long this label will run. So,
actually, just answered one of the questions that came through on a Q&A from Stephanie. Once a company receives a TISAX label, does it have an expiration date? Is there recertification? And if there are fewer audits, does this mean there's not a yearly verification audit that the company is adhering to the requirements?
there's not a yearly verification audit. You have to do it by yourself. You have to do your at least once a year audit, and you have to consider all your processes. And after 3 years, they come back to you, and they will. It's a new label. Then it's over your complete system, and so maybe you could try not to do your internal audits throughout the 3 years, but this will lead to a huge problem because they will recognize whether your system is alive or not. Because in these 3 years, they happened a lot of things. There appeared new things like for example, pandemic situation. And in the pandemic situation, there was a task about home office, working in home offices, for example. This were faced with problems about your IT structure, for example, and also about risks with confidentiality, because there were many people maybe at home that shouldn't be faced with your information that you could share, for example. And this means if you are not working constantly with your system, it won't be possible for you after the 3 years to make them obvious that your system really has a PDCA circle that really works, because this is always the core of a management system. Without this improvement that's has always to go on, you won't succeed in being recertificated.
Mm-hmm. I suppose at the end of the day, yes, it's not only an IT department thing, but it is including IT systems. And look how quickly technology moves anyway. You certainly couldn't sit for 3 years without having vast technological changes. Yeah. Thank you. Stefan, of course, at Encoder, we do consulting and training in the TISAX environment, but I'm sure there's a lot of people here who'd like to start looking into this. Is there any publicly available information about TISAX?
Yes, of course. Everyone can find it in the internet. You can download it. There's a reference manual about the TISAX process itself. This describes the thing that we call the 3 steps to TISAX. It's about getting the TISAX label, getting through this process, but it doesn't describe really how you should handle the questions and the controls that you will be faced with. These controls are written down in this questionnaire, what you can also see here. questionnaire is also available free. Everyone can download it, and you will see lots of questions. This leads to hundreds of things that you have to find answers on, and the question is always how to understand it. That's what we had to learn for ourselves, that it's quite difficult sometimes to find the differences in the requirements, what should be mandatory, what has to be mandatory, or also what's nice to have. It always depends on your label. It always depends on some different requirements. So you can find here very much questions, but how to answer them will be a different thing.
Stefan, Stefan, I have a question. Is there, in your experience with the auditor or to make the assessment, is there any experience what kind of qualification TISAX would be expected that you can do an assessment for companies? But from my opinion is we're talking about is not only IT, is the whole management system. That means for me that an auditor, he makes an assessment, have to make an audit team with a system expert and expert in TISAX and IT. That's what my thinking is. Is that the way? What the experience? What you have with your assessor? What audit your company? That's, I think, a question what a lot of people looking for. So what kind of qualification or what kind of auditors we have to expect?
Yes, the auditor has, of course, is experienced in auditing companies. Some are more, some are less, but everyone can consider management systems, and they have always different questions because everyone has different special expert knowledge. But just in case, if they ask you something for your technical things of your IT system, you have to find someone, or you have to answer it for yourself, and it can be very specific. So we had a team that were facing these questions. We had roles. Everyone had his special rule. We had a information security officer. We also had someone from our HR department. So these questions were always addressed to the person who was really deep in this topic, and we also prepared these answers for the special topics. But it's not so easy to explain it if you are not involved in these processes.
Yeah, but in other consequence, it means that the auditor himself or the audit team have also understand in each different companies their process how to implement a TISAX. It is not like you have a recipe, you do it like this and that's it. That is also a lot of questions or how to argue these topics in the questionnaire. So we know it also from other standards. So that's my thinking, that it's important what the audit or the audit team have to be as an experience come to the company to audit them. So that's what I expect. If I invest the money like this, I have professional TISAX, professional auditors to give me the right things, and not always to see I come and will find something wrong so that I can make more money. That's what I hear from some other companies. So that's why for me, I'm facing, so which audit team make a real proper work, since he make the final assessment also for consulting or to help companies that they bring the right people in to do this job.
Yes, throughout the years they might gain the expertise to always to be more secure in these questions, and we also learned during the years how to face the problems, how to face the TISAX requirement, and how to handle it. But in the beginning, at least in the beginning, it would have been a major help to have an external expert who would show us how to handle these controls and how to answer these questions and what we can do about it, and what would be the solutions, for example, also for the contractual situation. This was a major thing that we also had to learn for years, and we still are at that process.
I'm sure. I've got a few open questions here for you guys. Anybody who wants to take them is welcome to. First one, Nicole Nikita, you must be in marketing like me, because this is the first question that comes to mind for me also. Is there a label that I can post on my website? Or can I share my TISAX labeling, and how?
Well, it's shared on the TISAX platform. That's meant with the exchange in the wording TISAX. But of course, you are allowed, if you're labeled with TISAX, you're allowed to share this TISAX label on your website. And you also can mention your label, how you're labeled. We also do, but feel free to do that. The major thing is that it's also exchanged with your customers. For example, if you have a huge OEM like Volkswagen or BMW, they have portals that are directly linked to this TISAX platform. So if they load up your actual label, your testing supplier does this, then you can exchange it also with the purchase department from your customer, in case of they are having such a portal, and it's meant like this. So, but you also can publish it on your own website, of course.
Yeah, I'm sure like a lot of companies put ISO certified in their footer, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's some kind of a certificate that you can show.
Yeah. And I think you made that clear to me when we started prepping for this webinar, and I've learned a lot. There's no certificate that I hang on the wall. It's about this label and information exchange. Yeah. So from Matthias, when it comes to cyber attacks, how robust would you say is a TISAX labeled company in comparison to a company without TISAX label?
Well, I think we learned something about our information security, and we learned a lot about information security. But in our case, it was more about internal risks. If some intruder came into this firm, and not so much about the cybersecurity from outside. But in the end, if you have an existing information security system and you are facing these problems, I think it doesn't matter whether you're TISAX labeled or not. But the TISAX raises the awareness. You also could use the questionnaire, the catalog, and check all these questions there, and find your solutions for answering that, even if it's not sufficient that the auditor would consider them as to be valid. But the questions that you have to face that are all written down there, and you have to find solutions for that, for example. And it's sometimes very clear, sometimes it's a little gloomy in the formulations, like they are telling it, but in fact, I think the TISAX raises the awareness of the things, and if somebody will give you a label for that, in our case, it was also a satisfaction that we did a good job, that we succeeded in answering the questions in a maturity label that was valid for that. And if you don't do a label like that, maybe if you're doing a self-assessment with ISO 27001, your own requirements won't be so hard. You don't have to convince an auditor with your solution, and for yourself, you maybe or internal auditor is maybe easier to satisfy. Yeah, so I think there's an additional value.
Yeah, certainly. A question from Noluzuko. My organization recently received an assessment form from a customer to complete the TISAX assessment. We nobody knew what this was. So that's why they're on the webinar today. Thank you for joining. Hopefully it's useful to you guys. So their IT department is outsourced. How do we start with the implementation of TISAX? Because we barely answered yes to the assessment questions.
Well, the IT department, in our case, it's also outsourced. We have an external IT administrator, but we also have an internal information security officer, and the information security officer, the most important guy here, because he's handling all the threats. He is aware of all the questions, and he's the master of your information security system. So the external IT department, that's a supporting process for you. And of course, they are important. They have to answer all the questions, but there also would be a conflict if they would also be the information security officer. This have to be two different persons. So you have to be aware that the IT department is able to fulfill all your needs just in case of the tasks that are new. Maybe they are not able to fulfill these tasks. Then you also had to have some different support if your internal IT department is not able to answer these questions. So this won't be a problem. The ISO, I would recommend that the ISO is an internal person, because he is always he must always have the overview on everything what happens with your information security in all over your firm, in every process. And I think you don't want to show your external IT department everything what happens, for example, in the human resources department, and also they are not allowed to see that. So there have to be some restrictions also for the IT department. You have to find several mechanisms, for example, log servers and so on. They shouldn't be able to influence the results of that and to make different view for your information security officer, because the information security officer always has to see the whole landscape of the problems without any influence from different person, especially not an external person.
Makes sense. Question from Daniel. What are the most common findings of a TISAX audit? Sorry, I suppose that's a bit like how long is a piece of string question?
Well, I don't know, because they are so different. In our case, there was one major finding that our roommate had not subscribed non-disclosure agreement. She didn't see anything of our information, but she could theoretically, and this was a major deviation. So this was to handle very easy. But there also were some things about, for example, the coding of our security system. And this was something that we couldn't manage and for ourselves. We couldn't answer it for ourselves. We had to contact the manufacturer of the security system of our alarm system, and they also had to ask the developer for that. And so these findings show the very wide range of the topics that you can be faced with, and most things that we had were the last time were about, for example, the encryption of our internal net. It was not so much whether it was not necessary, how it was documented, and it's not so easy to find out all these specific questions, because in this case it was a special topic from the special auditor. A different auditor wouldn't have asked these questions. They would have asked different questions. So, for example, in our first audit, what we had, it was most things about cloud services. For example, we have some cloud services from Microsoft, for example, and they asked us to have a special contract with Microsoft on different questions, how they should handle our data. Of course, Microsoft don't even respond on our questions, but we had to find in these contracts that are hundreds of pages, we had to find is exactly the items that were satisfying these questions and these requirements. And this you had to use a lot of fantasy to really find these things and to know how it was meant and how it could be answered. And this is often how we are handling it. Sometimes it's only through the risk management, so you can weaken it, but it always depends on the special kind of the requirements. Is it a requirement that's mandatory, that you can't manage anything about it, you just have to fulfill it? And in some other cases, it depends on your experience and on your knowledge about how to handle information security system and how to handle especially this TISAX requirements, so you can get rid of these problems and we'll get your label then.
Yeah. Try. Good luck negotiating with Google or Microsoft. From Ahmed, what is the main gap between TISAX and ISO 27001?
The main gap is that in the case of 27001, you have to fulfill the requirements of this norm, but it's not obvious out of this norm what will be sufficient for the successful answering the questionnaire of ISA. The VDA questionnaire is very, very concrete, where you can't negotiate the requirements, where you have to consider requirements to be mandatory. And in the case of the ISO, you could say it's always under consideration of your firm. How big are you? What's the purpose of your business? And the difference between the handling the ISO is that you have to consider certain parts of your firm, and in the TISAX you have to consider your whole firm, but it depends on the label what you want to achieve. And this always makes the difference how your assessment will look like and how strong your information security system has to be armed. And but you can't disclose anything what you say it's not necessary for my business, but it's content of your scope. So they consider everything what's content of your scope to be necessary to be considered for TISAX. And that's a difference in handling it. But in case of if you're looking at your whole scope without any disclosure, then the ISO of course will be a perfect basis for achieving to a really quick labeling with TISAX. It's the best basis for that.
Okay, perfect. So they're complementary.
Mm-hmm.
Manny mentioned that he actually had to leave the call, but he did ask, I mean, I'm not sure if this is one for you more, what are the planning costs for the implementation of TISAX?
In this case, that's also difficult to answer.
Yeah.
We have only some, let's say, example of quotes, what we saw. And that's from 50,000 up, 50,000 euro up. It depends on how big a company is and how often he needs some support. So yeah. That's my experience, what I have to see, quotations and so on. The investment is quite high, especially for smaller company.
Yeah.
So okay, that's my experience. Maybe Stefan, you have some.
Yes, in case of just the assessment and the labeling, what you have to pay to the assessment provider, it's between 10 and 15,000 euros, for example. But this doesn't contain the effort for your for managing your own system, for creating your own system, and in case of the system, how to get a good information security system that's really valid for the TISAX. It's always a thing. There's not a way where you can say it's the best to do that. But as I can consider it from my own experience, we had a lot of internal work, and there was at least a year someone was working with very high capacity for a year on these topics. And if you consider that, this leads up to a higher 5-digit amount. So it could also be a 6-digit amount. It always depends on how your firm is prepared for that. And for example, if you have to marry this with a quality management systems, and usually you have to, then it gets more and more complicated because several persons are involved into that. There's must not be, but often there is a quality management officer, and if they have to come to one point, the quality management officer and the ISO, then it's getting more and more complicated, and it also has to be adjusted between these. And every department has to be involved. So if you have external support for that, and an expert gives you a way how you should consider these questions in a special view, then this would ease very much the doing, how you can go through the process for making your your quality management systems and your information security system, for example, fit for being valid for the TISAX. So you can see the TISAX labeling itself, it's the minor problem. If you consider the cost, it's expensive. It's more expensive than some other certificates, but the most expensive is what you can do besides this, and the most expensive is what you can do wrong besides this if you are not experienced in it and if you have no support for that.
Mm-hmm. At least we've got a ballpark there. So ballpark of the kind of costing, and it really depends on the situation where your organization is. Silke has asked, is there an overview of which OEMs accept TISAX labeling or require, I guess, what we've learned now is that which OEMs require TISAX labeling, and an overview of those that will rely on the outcome without requiring further specific security-related audits performed by them or delegates. Right now, only VW, BMW, Mercedes go for TISAX in an official way.
Yeah. The reason is that TISAX is a label that's created from the ENX, and the ENX is a club. It's founded of the European car manufacturers, and also about of some suppliers such as Bosch, for example, or Continental. And this club is present all around the world, because if you're, for example, in the US, you of course have some companies that are strictly American, but we are in a globalized world. And for example, if you're looking at Chrysler, it's content of FCA, that is content of Stellantis. So it's a European firm, and they are also part, for example, PSA and FCA, they are also part of the ENX. So it's disclosing, for example, the Japanese manufacturer, but in case of the European and all what's dependent from the European manufacturers, it's mandatory, and they are all in this club. So they are all asking you for having this TISAX label earlier or later. It's just a matter of time. So in our case, it was BMW, because we are resident in Munich here, and BMW asked for that 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and this was mandatory for us to win it, and nobody else in those times knew about that. And when we looked into this TISAX listing, we couldn't find any of our customers, for example. We couldn't find any of the suppliers there, but time after time, they got more and more inside this listing, and so in the end, you will find everyone in the automotive industry inside of the TISAX system. Mm-hmm. Nobody can do without it here in Europe, and also in the companies that are part of the concerns that are European. So, for example, Volkswagen, there's also mandatory, and if you go to a different plant in South Africa or the US, then if it's a Volkswagen plant, it's also mandatory there.
Okay. So just to clarify, we can check on the NX website, and then it'll be clear who's all part of this, the NX association.
Yeah, if you're registered there, you can see everything.
Perfect. Apologies, it's gotten dark here. It's South Africa, load shedding. Good news, the Wi-Fi is working. So I've got a last question for you. It's a long one. I hope I word this correctly. Jacob, thank you for always actually answer asking questions in the webinars. But if I don't ask this correctly, we'll email you, Jacob, in case it's confusing. It's a long one.
Mhm.
Okay, according to VDA ISA 5, clause 8.3.1, it is possible to exempt the transport of vehicles, components, or parts classified as requiring protection arranged or a measure in accordance with the customer requirements. What evidence can I show with the TISAX to comply with point 8.1.2 of IATF 16949? And do I consider the TISAX as an integrated software or tool? Well, it's not software or tool. Did that make sense, or do I need to email you and we can get back?
In the end, I forgot about the start of the question. It was a very long one.
Okay, Jacob, I hope it's okay. I will mail the guys and we will mail you. And for anybody who wants to see the answer, I'll include it. We'll have the recording up on our blog and on the podcast by the end of the week. And I'll certainly highlight this as a response to this question. In that, we will also be sharing the slides at that point. Let me just copy paste this one before I accidentally close the webinar and lose that question. That's it, unless there are any other questions from anyone. Thank you. That was quite a few questions that came through, and that's a lot of detail. Had a really good turnout, and I hope everybody has found this useful. And it's certainly, since I started in this industry, you know, everybody's like TISAX, SMESAX. So I hope that brought a lot of clarity. Guys, thank you very much for your time today. We'll speak soon.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.